So, a little while ago, I had somebody comment on one of my last videos I made about fairies, saying that they were confused about why I was referring to fairies as being very dark and scary, because their only interactions or experience of the fae, and metaphysically speaking, have been good interactions. And so I really wanted to kind of dive into that because I'm extremely interested in the darker types of fae. And it's also kind of surprising to me that these things aren't more well known. I mean, really, you don't have to look very far to find scary fairies in pretty much any folklore around the world. And so I'm not talking specifically about like all of the dark fairies today. I figured it'd be really cool to start off talking about the ones that are associated with the dead. Although, as we will discuss, a lot of them may actually be the spirits of the dead themselves, which could explain why they have been seen as not really good or evil necessarily, but something in between. That's why a lot of them have been seen as very maliciously prankster-esque. So yeah, let's get into the first part of this, probably at least a couple part series talking about just in general why I talk about scary fairies. So there's quite a few stories. If we look at Irish, Welsh, Scottish, British, and even some Slavic stories that we can find. And I'm sure if we look at other cultures around the world, we can see that in a lot of these stories, fairies aren't said to necessarily just be associated with the dead or interact with the dead on occasion, or even, be almost guides for the dead in a way. Sometimes, in fact, quite often, it seems like the fairies themselves are the spirits of the dead. And I find this really, really interesting for a lot of reasons, which I might get to in this video, but what I really wanted to talk about is this list that I've collected, and it is probably by no means extensive. But let's go over some of these. First off, I will say, a lot of these stories are probably very much, they've probably been changed because of Christianity. So it's a little hard to know maybe like if these stories even originated before Christianity. If they did, what exactly did they look like? Because a lot of these countries, even the people who do still believe in the fairy faith, are still pretty Christian. And I'm not speaking as an expert. That's just what it seems like based on my research from over here in America. But if any of y'all are from any of those countries, please, let me know. I would love to hear about it. So that being said, a lot of these stories have to do with different types of fairies that are said to be the spirits of unbaptized whatever, right? Sometimes it's unbaptized children. Sometimes it's unbaptized, just like unbaptized young people. Sometimes it's like the damned, the unforgiven, like before they died. Very Christian themes, right? So I'm not 100% sure what those would have necessarily looked like in pagan times. I guess that's really just open up to theory. Maybe I just need to do more research, which I kind of want to. But yeah, so some specific ones. Everyone's heard of a banshee, right? Maybe not everybody knows that a banshee is actually said to be a spirit of a deceased person herself. She doesn't just announce an upcoming death, and like the stories vary. Sometimes she is said to be announcing the death of an actual family member. Sometimes it's the death of somebody in a town. Sometimes it's the death of a hero. But she's also, in some of the stories I found, said to be the spirit of a young woman who was murdered violently. So she is herself dead. There's also something called I think this one is from Scotland, the Highland, I don't know if I'm going to say these right. I'm definitely not, to be honest, but I'm going to try. The Highland Bodach Gloss, which I guess translates to the dark gray man. I haven't found a whole lot of specific information on him, but he is on the list of fairies that were also spirits of the dead, and he was apparently, you really didn't want to see him because he signaled your impending doom, which sounds pretty horrible. There's something called a Doulahan. Again, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing. A Doulahan, or a Doulahan, was said to ride around the countryside on his thundering black steed until he came to a stop, and he would hold his head up as a way to summon the spirits of the dead, or the spirit of the specific person who was about to die. So that's horrifying. Also kind of fun because I'm betting that might be the origin of the Headless Horseman story. I mean, it sounds like the exact same kind of idea. So yeah. Dunters and Powries, or these, I think these are the same thing, there's just different words for them. But Dunters or Powries were said to inhabit border castles. And they always, I guess, made weird little noises like they were milling grain, or I guess like making bread. But if if either there was impending disaster on the way or somebody was about to die in the castle, they would get way more rambunctious. I'm also curious if this particular type of fairy is in any way the same or associated or whatever with red caps. Red caps are another type of like dark fairy. They're not necessarily associated with the dead, at least not from what I've read. However, they are also said to inhabit border castles where like great tragedies have happened. And red caps are called red caps because they like dip their hats into the blood of the battlefield, essentially, and they have to constantly have blood in their hats. It's like basically their food source. It's kind of vampire-y, but they're also like kind of described like little fierce gnomes. I love red caps. They're like one of my favorite scary fairies. So let's see here. So this is another one. I might do an entire video just on this person. Because I'm really, or this character, whatever, because I'm really curious about him. But this Irish fairy monarch named Finvara was also known as the King of the Dead, and he ruled over deceased mortals. So yeah, like I again, there's so much here. Like literally, I'm not even halfway through this list, y'all. So okay, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of fukas. They're shape-shifting fairies that usually take the shape of like maybe a large black dog or a black horse or something like that. There's a specific one associated with Kildare in Ireland that in one of the stories specifically identified itself as the spirit of an indolent scullion. Indolent scullion. I don't know exactly what indolent means, to be honest. I think maybe I originally read that as insolent. Whatever. Google is cool. So, there's a couple of these cold lads. They're called the Cauld Lad of Hilton. It's spelled C-A-U-L-D. I think it's just like how they're pronouncing cold, maybe. I don't know. But these are both, I believe, in England. The Cauld Lad of Hilton was said to be have been expelled by the servants of Hilton Hall by laying out a new cloak and hood, which is the traditional way that you basically evict a brownie if you no longer want them in your services. Because brownies can be problematic if you don't appease them, like most fairies. But that's a whole nother topic. So they expelled the spirit that way, and so it was said that he was the spirit of a murdered servant boy. But they were able to get rid of him in a traditional fairy method. The Cold Lad of Gilsland, is said to be the restless soul of a boy neglected who died of hypothermia. But he behaved in a similar way to a banshee or another kind of oh my god, harbinger, and he would basically like shiver and moan next to the bed of somebody about to die, which is super creepy and super tragic at the same time. The Dunny was a Northumberland boggy. I don't know what a boggy is, but it's a really cute word. The Northumberland boggy named Dunny was a shape-shifting prankster who liked to appear as a donkey or a horse, and he would play pranks on the farmers. But apparently he was known to have been the spirit of a plundering border reaver. So again, it could be kind of related to some Christian silliness, because someone who is a border reaver was probably not a very nice person. So yeah, I don't know. Oh, the Slua. I'm just going to talk about a few more of these, and I'll be good for now. Let's see here. So the Slua were these dark-winged entities that kind of sometimes associated with the Wild Hunt. A little bit different, but very, very similar in actuality. So they were these dark-winged entities that would fly across the sky and try to force mortals to join in malicious mischief. They were said to be the souls of the unforgiven dead, which would imply maybe, like, you know, they've also not repented of their sins. The Bien Naich, I can't say I can't say the Gaelic words, but also known as the washer at the ford. She was said to be the spirit of a mother who died in childbirth, and she was also the one that, in a lot of stories, heroes would see this old woman crying over bloody clothes that she was washing in the stream, and it was said to be that she was washing their clothing. And again, it's another one of those stories of a harbinger, like, you're gonna die, or someone you love is gonna die. But in this case, I think it was whoever saw her was the ones who, you only saw her if you were the one that was about to die. Knockers. I've heard of knockers before. These are apparently Cornish fairies that are said to inhabit the mines. I don't know exactly what time period this was in, and this one is interesting to me historically. Maybe I just don't know enough about the history of this time period and this place, but they were Cornish fairies said to inhabit the mines that were said to be the spirits of dead Jews who had toiled there in ancient times. Now, I don't know if there were, like, Jewish mine slaves in England at any point in ancient times. I don't know. Again, a lot of these stories are also coming from however long ago that have just carried over time, right? So they've shifted, who knows where they originated, but I've definitely heard stories of knockers before. I just had never until recently heard the thing about them being the spirits of deceased Jewish, like, miners, essentially. One of the Slavic ones is the Vili. These were actually, like, literally they talk about this in Harry Potter. What's her name? Fleur Delacour is, like, part Vila. I think it's the same thing. They're, like, very seductive, almost, you know, siren-y. But in some some traditions of Slavic folklore, they say that these were actually the spirits of prideful maids or unbaptized young people. I didn't say specifically infants. Who knows? But yeah. So I just thought this was all super interesting. Let me know what you guys think. Are there any of these that you guys have heard of that are super creepy, or other ones that I didn't mention that you have found in your own research that are associated with or may actually be considered the spirit of a dead person? Because there are some stories here too that's like nobody knows exactly who the spirit belonged to. Some of them are said to be the spirits of the dead, but not necessarily like specific individuals. It's kind of weird. It's almost like archetypal dead people energy. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah. So thanks for watching, and let me know what you think. Bye.